now call Mr. Chefuta, the overall convener of the community. Mr. Chefuta, can we give him a round of applause?
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. Do you know a respectable gentleman called Mr. Gwede Mantashe? I had an opportunity of listening to him on a radio interview on SAFM with Tim Modise. So Tim Modise was holding on the other side. Good evening, Mr. Mantashe. It was in the evening, around 7. Mr. Mantashe kept on saying good morning on the other side. And you could hear there was a disruption. So when he finally commits and gets to the interview, then Tim Modise asks, should it not be good evening, Mr. Mantashe? He says, where I come from, regardless of the time, when you speak with people for the first time, it's good morning. The President of the Republic of South Africa, the ministers, and the entire government delegation, leaders of civil society in community constituency, leaders and delegates in the labor, the leadership and delegates in business, guests, the executive director of NEDLAC, and all staff of NEDLAC, good afternoon. Molweni. Well, our point of departure is the State of the Nation address that was delivered by His Excellency President Ramaphosa in 2018, where he asserted that at the center of our national agenda in 2018 is the creation of jobs, especially for youth. One of the initiatives we will be convening is the Job Summit, which will be expected to come up with practical solutions and initiatives that will be implemented immediately. We see that as constituting the mandate of this summit. As a social partner that has been involved in all the work, right from the onset, we want to take this opportunity and commend social partners for the collective effort we have put in pursuing this mandate to the best of our abilities. Well, others have argued that we know the challenges that we're confronted with. We know what has to be done. We don't need any more summits. We must just do what has to be done. We are of the different view that we need more of these sessions. But the distinguishing factor between these and any other must be the action. And so, the 2018 Presidential Job Summit must also distinguish itself from many others by making full commitment to take action and implement the agreements of this summit. For some time now, our discourse has been littered with theatrical discussions, which at the bottom of it always come to the recitation of the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And we have so ineptly articulated what is happening with all these challenges. To buttress that, the NDP diagnostic report argued that there are two cardinal challenges that we're confronted with. One is that our educational outcomes are too poor, or we do not receive the requisite returns on the investments we make in education. Our outcomes in education are even poorer than countries that invest less than South Africa. The second cardinal challenge is that too few South Africans work, or we have high unemployment in South Africa. The NDP does not only identify those challenges, but it also proposes solutions and set targets. But from where we are now, we are only 11.2 years to the end of the lifespan of the NDP. And others have already written it off that without any hesitation, we are going to miss the targets that have been set in the NDP. We want to argue though, that it is not all lost. We are of the firm view that unless some catalysts are introduced in the implementation of the NDP, we may be holding a false hope against the NDP. As part of the solution, what could be these catalysts that could be introduced to take us closer to fulfilling those noble goals of the NDP? One of those is that we can't escape the function of attracting investments and thereby reigniting economic growth in our society. We have to stimulate and support economic activity through SMMEs and cooperatives, including township and rural-based enterprises. We have to promote and support youth employment in the formal employment and massive efforts towards self-employment of young people through youth entrepreneurship. We have to provide training and skills development to leverage the productive capacities of our young people and people in general. We have to use and leverage the power of procurement as a stimuli. Social partners in their collective resolve and action should take collective action to build confidence on our economy. One of those catalysts should be to restore the integrity of the state and crack down on corruption. In 2016 already, Stats SA advised that South Africa, like the rest of Africa, had entered the demographic window of youth bulge. This suggests that South Africa has a youthful population than any other population group. Now, this presents us with two things. A youth bulge can present opportunities, but it can also present threats. A youth bulge presents opportunities only when we invest in the lives of young people, through which we can then go and claim the demographic dividend. If we continue to recite the challenges of young people as a ticking time bomb and just look at them, we are not investing in the lives of young people. They will become a threat to the very same essence of stability and democracy in society. And so, our call is that we must spare no effort in making all the necessary investments to develop and empower our youth as our resource and our future. The same report of Stats SA suggested that empirically, there are three structural binding constraints to youth unemployment. One is education, two is skills, three, it is race. Well, we can understand education and skills, and we have dedicated a lot of time in discussing that work in the processes of the Job Summit. But what does the race aspect mean? It means that those who are African and black in general have less chances of finding employment, not because they have not done anything or they have done anything, only because they are who they are. That on its own becomes a setback, and we cannot say anything about that. Coupled with that is the phenomenon of unemployed graduates. If left unchecked, the phenomenon of unemployed graduates is going to contest space with the very same value and essence of education. These unemployed graduates are going to wake up and ask a question one day. If we are graduates and our fate is as the same as those who have not had education, what is the value of education? We must do all it takes. We must do all it takes to make sure that the investments we make in education do not go to waste. We use those young people as a resource that will be there to grow our economy through the skills that they shall have acquired. Our society, we argued long time ago, that must be happy to have had a generation of young people that demanded free quality education or free quality education. Because at that point in time, there were no instances where young people were waking up to demand tenders, whether they had companies or not. But you are seeing that happening today. that people wake up and say, there is no one who's going to do any work in this community if we do not have 30%, if we do not have 40%. And therefore, the value that we make in our investments in education with our young people is a value that we must not take for granted. When young people stand up and demand education and skills, they are making a difficult choice which many others have not taken. They are taking a choice to say, empower us with education and skills so that we can build our own houses, we can afford our own health care, so that they do not stand in the queues for free health care, for free housing, for free many other things that are provided by government. That is the choice that they are making. What could be the solutions practically in addressing the challenges that we have in education and skills? The first is that our education system in its entirety must have multiple exit points. There is now empirical evidence that those who start grade 1, whichever year they do, by the time they get to grade 10, more than 50% of them drop out from grade 10. We may argue that they qualify to go to TVET colleges, but our system has been designed to tell everyone that you go and get grade 12, even if you're going to come back down and go to a TVET college. But if, as part of our education system, there was an exit route after standard 7, grade 9, those multitudes of young people would have appreciated the fact that that is the point at which they exit school. Society is not going to write them off. Instead, it is going to channel them to TVET colleges, because it is through TVET colleges that we can provide technical, occupational, and vocational skills that are so much needed in the areas of investments that even government is investing in. When we do that, we must be making a bold statement that we are sitting with the majority of people that we should be talking about finding jobs, but not having grade 12. And we're not saying anything about them. Some of them are walking around collecting papers. We don't see value in the opportunities that they do in collecting card boxes. All we see is the inconvenience of these people who pull big trolleys in the tar road when we should be driving our luxurious cars. We can't write them off. They are part of our society. They have a legitimate claim to democracy and development and prosperity in South Africa. All institutions that provide education and training must have an embedded mandate of providing work readiness program, job preparedness, such that we smooth the transition from school to work, such that we cut all the red tape that would enable people who leave school to find employment. Because empirically, if young people leave school and they do not find employment, even an internship, it may take them longer or forever to ever find the first work that they should be doing. State-owned companies, SETAs, TVET colleges, and the private sector must collaborate to deliver technical, vocational, and occupational skills. There are relationships that as social partners we must build. Colleges must open themselves up to be influenced by business on the necessary skills that are required by the labor market. Business must embrace that challenge with the greatest warmth it can. On the other side, when these young people acquire this training, there has to be placement opportunities for them to exercise what they shall have learned. We want to make a clarion call in this summit that if we're serious about youth employment, we must, in the subsequent discussions, emerge with a full commitment that all young people who go through TVET colleges are going to receive 100% placement as part of work integrated learning or upon completion, because we believe that the existing skill system can basically afford that. We should affirm the principle of second chances. Instead of problematizing the lack of education and skills, there are many young people who have tried school and dropped out. We must run a campaign to bring them back, even in high schools. There are many who have dropped out in institutions of higher learning. Who knows if we recruit them within the shortest space of time upon their completion, we may completely change the complexion of what we're decrying as skills development. There are many projects that we are implementing in society. Our call is that no project should be implemented without such project having a skills plan as a prerequisite to determine what are the skills that are going to be required in those projects, even those projects that will be coming through the investments that the president is championing, such that we position ourselves to build skills for those projects well in advance. We also position ourselves to build skills through the implementation of those projects when they are actually being implemented. When we look into the economic sector interventions, we know that there are huge investments that go into infrastructure development, green economy, digital migration, and you name them many. But the opportunities that we should see there is that it is through those projects that we must provide work integrated learning opportunities to young people. It is through those projects that we must provide employment opportunities to the unemployed. It is through those projects that we should provide those who are already qualified with work experience exposure. It is through those projects that we should provide entrepreneurs in the communities where those projects are taking place with economic opportunities, in the mainstream, the down, and the side stream of the activities that are taking place there. We also know that there are penalties that accrue from the competition penalties, BE, employment equity. Now, if you take one example on the Competition Act penalties, penalties are charged, they are paid, and they go into the national fiscus. This is just a discussion, Minister Nene. But the essence of those who collude is to close space for new entrants into the market. So the monies that accrue from there should not only go into the national fiscus, but they must go to stimulate the penetration of those who have been barred to enter the market by those who have colluded. The same should apply to BE. The same should apply to employment equity. With SMME support, let's just raise these few issues loosely, that there should be a full life cycle of what we provide to entrepreneurs in the SMME space as part of the solution. One is that entrepreneurship can be taught. So entrepreneurship education, especially amongst young people, should be one of the pillars of the work that we do in supporting SMMEs. We have experiences, even through the Youth Employment Accord, where 2.7 billion was committed, but 5 years on, there was no much movement on that, only because we committed money without dedicated focus of building a pipeline of enterprises that will have the capacity to access that. And that calls on us to have business development support as one of those. And market opportunities should be provided to the SMMEs. In conclusion, there are simple things that we can wake up and do even tomorrow in stimulating and creating jobs. One of those is that if we encourage young people to go to TVET colleges, it discourages young people not to see job adverts having TVET qualifications as a requirement. And so that is one of the recommendations that we can have. We must not bar young people from entering the labor market by high demands for experience. We must equally consider the potential they have, because experience is required in the workplace. And lastly, we have to have dedicated support to provide the unemployed with the practical costs of looking for employment, such that we make sure that as they look for those opportunities, they know that they have all the necessary support. With those few words, we wish to thank you very much. Siyabonga.